Welcome to the Consummate Athlete Podcast, where we explore what it means to be a well-rounded, happy, goal-crushing athlete. Every week, myself, sports journalist Molly Herford, and cycling coach and kinesiologist Peter Glassford interview experts and chat through all of your training questions. We're excited to have you along for the ride. Hello. Welcome back to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. I am very excited that I can now articulate relatively well after a week and a half of having stitches in my mouth. So I feel like I might still sound a little bit, I'm still struggling with a few lispy things, but we're getting there. Peter, how are you?
It's good. I also had a bit of lip stuff done, sort of a weird
We were in like a no makeout zone for quite a while.
It's very enjoyable. But then, it's the time of year, this fall season, where we can do some of these procedures, get these appointments done. A lot of blood work will get done this time of year. Bike maintenance is done. Preparing for indoor training. It's really the time, like people ask, what do you do in the off season? It's a lot of stuff. You got a lot of stuff you have to get done.
Well, and as new homeowners, we also learned this weekend, I feel like you got in some good bonus strength work, moving all the patio furniture inside, doing all the
Could be. I'm very sore now and complainy.
It's true. You are very complainy, but you got stuff done. So very proud of you on that note. And with daylight savings time, in past years, we've often talked about the no trainer till December goal. And I think we have both softened on that a fair bit, especially.
Oh, I haven't softened. And it's a challenge. It's not a goal. It's just a challenge. I haven't softened. I just don't know that I'll do it this year because I have to go to a camp, which gets more to the goal setting, I guess. I
would say you've softened on it in that, you no longer think that everyone should think like this.
I don't know. Did I do that? Maybe I did.
I would say you pushed that narrative pretty hard. We were pretty anti-trainer for a lot of years. And I think as we've gotten older and realized that people have, we talked about this on an episode a couple weeks ago. People have lives and families and work and stuff, and it's not always realistic to get to ride after work outdoors, especially now that the clocks have gone back. So now it's getting darker earlier. So, if you're someone who usually rides after work, guess what? It's now dark.
Yeah. So. No, I don't know that I would admit, I think, if I've changed my stance on something. I don't think I've changed my stance on it.
We literally just said it in a podcast 2 weeks ago that we've softened on the concept anyway.
No, because I'm terrified of the dark. So I think I've many times told people that I don't expect them to ride outside in the dark if that's when they have to ride, for sure.
This is true. On that note, though, I guess any quick hit tips on getting set up on the indoor trainer with your outdoor bike? What are sort of some of your go-tos for making sure the bike is ready to go on the trainer?
Well, you probably want to get your bike maintained. This is, again, you take this week off and people are like, well, what do I do? It's things like bike maintenance usually take a while. So I would get that bike working because it is sort of annoying to then have it, you go and you jump on the trainer at 6 a.m. and it's, the gears don't work or whatever the situation is. And a lot of the shops, I think, actually appreciate it this time of year. It is nicer to have the bike all clean and stuff when it goes in for the series. But the shop appreciates it because they probably don't have quite the same demand as they might as the spring weather comes back. So that's important. I would say you're going to have probably a full day of troubleshooting all the different stuff with the firmwares and the softwares and realizing you don't have the right part anymore because your cassette changed sizes or number of gears. So definitely give yourself, again, what do you do in those weeks off or the down weeks, the preparation phases is just troubleshooting stuff. So I would say even if you are trying to stay off the trainer or reduce your trainer in through October, November, whenever we're talking about this and whenever you're listening, I would take a day and think of it as a recovery spin, but know that you're probably going to be staring at your phone and try and not get frustrated versus most important day of the year and you're suddenly jumping on the trainer.
It's true. We always talk about how the trainer is very efficient from a time savings perspective, right? You can get on and do a very quick 60 minutes, get your work done, good to go. Come out of the basement, you're done. But definitely assume that the first trainer ride of the year is going to take double the time that you want to actually be riding.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you're pleasantly surprised. Sometimes stuff all just pairs really nicely and calibrates and everything else. But if it's been a bit, and especially in our situation, we've moved, but previously we would have to set up the trainer again. Some people's, they've been riding them all summer, right? So it's less of an issue, or it's just been in the same room and hasn't moved. Usually you're pretty good from that perspective. But now with the software, firmware stuff, and we're all just, it all just sort of changes even if you don't touch it. So
it's true. Any specific, like if someone's taking their outdoor bike and just tossing it on the trainer, should we be thinking cleaning our chains, getting some of the grime off?
For sure, that's probably good practice. I would say that I'm probably not the leading example of goodness with this, but
I think your bikes are pretty well maintained.
They're pretty good, and increasingly so now that we have a garage. But I would say if I had a workout today and yesterday I was riding outside and I hadn't cleaned my bike, I would just throw it straight on and go for it. But I don't know. It's sort of, you want it fresh stuff, and you do see those contact points. Sometimes it doesn't seem like people will update things like their bar tape and it's been worn across the summer, it's all getting frayed, and then I'm just going to sweat on it and I'm just going to run this one down. But you do have a lot of pressure points when you're on the trainer because you're not really moving around as much. So that would be stuff that you could definitely, again, spend time on. Learn how to tape a bar in your off week or in your down week when you're training a little less. That's a great skill to learn. It would save you a bit of money if you could tape your own bars and keep you comfortable and let you adapt to. You'll see people using different bar wraps if they're doing a big long bike packing thing versus racing or racing gravel versus road or whatever. So yeah, sort of something you could try as well.
Perfect. Okay, let's get into this week's questions. First up, we have, should I be using a power meter when I'm practicing my technical skills? And if so, should I be paying attention to it?
Well, so like generally, if you have a power meter, you can just use it all the time. Same way you probably would start using your heart rate all the time, your Garmin bike computer or your GPS all the time. Probably just collecting data is a good practice to do. Now, do you need to do that? I have some people that will go to the pump track or the bike park on their dirt jump bike and they're not recording power or probably heart rate or anything. And I probably wouldn't recommend doing that. Just go and focus on the skills, right? And I think that's the data should sort of inform at least anything you're looking at during the workout for sure. But just even what you're collecting should be reflective of the workout, right? So you'll see this with strength training. People will want to record it on their smartwatches, which I sort of get because it logs the workout automatically now. It'll just upload that file and then it sort of turns the workout green or like says the workout was done. But the heart rate isn't generally reflective of a strength training workout. It's not really impressive. Like it's actually pretty low, especially if someone's fairly fit aerobically. It would be like 60. And then maybe when you do a set of heavy squats, like maybe you'll see like 100, 110, 120. Now, some people will see higher heart rates, but it's still not going to be impressive for that person because that person probably rides a bike and hits 200 beats. So the fact they say 140 is meaningless. It's not going to be that interesting as far as TSS and this sort of stuff, this training stress score. So that's a digression, but you can see how like heart rate just isn't really relevant. Like I wouldn't really capture heart rate from that, but I can see why some people do. So similarly with technical skills, the focus should really be on doing the technical skill, just as strength training is on doing the lifts, having good form, not hurting yourself, following the routine. The technical skills should be focused on the repetitions, the reflection, the visualization, the setting up your course, having some fun maybe interspersed there. Whereas power, again, is just going to be so not interesting. At a pump track, you might not even see any power because you're barely even pedaling.
Well, you'd almost like not want to, like that would almost be the opposite. You're actually going for like the least amount of power put out.
Mm-hmm. So that would be some of the edge cases. You could figure out ways that we're trying to do the single track and not pedal or not put out as much power, but like have a similar time. But it's like such an edge case. Like I could talk about it, but it's not like something I've done very often or see super good utility from.
Yeah, and I think there's a pretty major caveat is if you're someone who's really into looking at your power, really, if you're paying attention to your power and you are someone who, I hesitate to use the phrase like exercise addiction, but if you are in that like, oh, I need to burn X number of kilojoules or I need to do this number, or you just get stressy when you see low power on the thing. You're like, oh no, I should be doing more. That's actually an argument for covering it up, at least. Like record, but don't look at it on your computer.
Yeah.
Like put up the map. Like we've kind of fallen off talking about that. We haven't said it in a while, but like I love just having the map up on my bike and not seeing the numbers.
Yeah, a lot of athletes I work with right now, like there's a couple different workouts they'll use, but the Saturday ride right now is assuming they can get outside. It gives an option for indoors or outdoors, but it'll say like map screen ride or technical focused ride. And nothing really else. Like it doesn't say, should it be hilly? Should it be hard? Should it be whatever? It's just sort of like getting out and exploring. I do think navigation's like a skill that's embedded in that map screen ride. It's not quite as simple as just going and riding.
Which we're learning is way more important in these gravel races, especially, frankly, with climate change, how courses have had to very quickly change, right? Like we just saw Big Sugar got cut to the 50-mile course, and there were a lot of people we heard about that went off course or missed a turn and stuff. And I guarantee those people didn't have their maps up, so they weren't actually following the 50-mile route. They were just looking for the signage. And because everything kind of happened quickly, I think some of the signage, maybe it wasn't as clear as it should have been.
Well, or even maybe they had it up, especially if they're elites.
This is more like the main pack. But also I saw this, I was at a race here in Collingwood last month, and someone had taken down signs, like purposefully took down a lot of the trail markings. Yeah. And if people had had the route on their watch, which isn't something that trail runners tend to do, even though the GPS files had been sent out, a lot of people ended up lost, and it took them like 15 hours to do the race instead of like the 6 that it should have taken. Ugh. So
yeah, that's and that would be it. Is that learning how to manipulate the map and troubleshoot the device, get yourself back onto a course, even adapt the route.
Well, zoom in. I would have gotten that stupid FKT in the cloche if I had had an actual GPS of the route, like on my watch and had it,
but then also trained where you got used to, when I'm off to the left of the line by this much on the screen, it means that it's only 30 meters. I understand how far 30 meters is through a forest.
No, I'm up the top of a cliff. Okay, I'm swimming this part.
So it relates to being in the real scenario. What is that thing? The map is not the territory is like a mental model. Like you have to be careful with that. But that would be learning how to manipulate the map, zoom in, zoom out, scan the map to see what's coming, use the elevation profile to know how long the climb is. There's all this stuff that your device can give you, but you do have to be also in the real world climbing the hills and in these situations. That's a digression. But the skills, the person's doing this bike skills, I've had a few people over the years where they either they keep mentioning, and you can tell they're looking at the power. To your point, is it because of kilojoules, or they're like concerned about weight loss, or like they think that average power is the only metric that matters? And I've had people actually with audible tones or like it announcing their normalized power, their average power, or some sort of like power metric. Whoa, we're just riding. And this could be I've seen it in a group ride, someone like this. I've seen it with heart rate too. So like this expands to all metrics. Just like, is this a relevant cue or a relevant metric while in the thing I'm doing? And you always just want to have the things that are relevant, because if you have more things, then it means you can't be focused. And so this is what you see. A beginner doesn't really know how to like pick the relevant cues, whereas an advanced rider, even without thinking about it, knows the things they need to pay attention to. So they're riding down the road and they're processing cars coming into driveways and doors opening and dogs running across. Like there's some fantastic riders, and it's like they don't even flinch. Like you can have squirrels running underneath them and they just like bunny hop and like don't even mention that they just jumped over it. I have a few friends that are amazing humans like this, and it's just so embedded. The movement and the bike is like part of them, right? And so that's what we're looking for. But if you are constantly getting buzzed like 0 normalized power, 150 normalized power, then it's now you get your brain's gonna have to process that, and then is it saying, you suck because 150, it's not 300, or is it just noise that's like getting through, and then you're like, I should turn that off, I don't know, I forgot, but it's like it's always on. So that would be the thing where we want to just sort of have the relevant information. So for something like a technical practice, you're practicing bunny hopping. It's really just, maybe you have your camera on your phone to get to video it and to get feedback, but it's really just getting out there and riding, right? Which should be fun.
Yeah. The only other caveat that I have to power while doing skills work is if you have power in your pedals and you are doing mountain bike stuff where you are going to be in a lot of rocks or a lot of roots and you are very inclined to clip your pedals, I would maybe just swap out the pedals for that ride, because sometimes those the dings can add up to your poor little power pedals.
Yeah, that's probably valid. I mean, probably any power meter is like smashing your phone off of something. They're not cheap to smash off of stuff. But yeah, that's the idea. Flat pedals are definitely like a good thing, but that's tangential.
Perfect. Okay. Before we get into our next one, a quick ad from our friends over at Payable. So if you've ever needed to take a payment and you just have not wanted to figure out what website to use, how to set up a web shop, all that, you can now take payments in a Google form thanks to the Payable add-on.
Now, we were thinking we would do maybe once a week here when we do our Payable ad, we'll do sort of a, the form of the week. And so this week's form of the week from Payable is my training plan adjustment form. So if you follow a training plan that I build, in it links to this Google form where you can request a training plan adjustment. So you're following a plan, one of the 3-month plans or one of our pre-made plans that are on Training Peaks. Let's say you're getting ready for Leadville and you realize you have a 2-week vacation or you injured yourself. You can use this form. Tell me about the disruption, what you would need it to be changed to, or what you think would be a good solution. And then you pay $30 for the adjustment and for me to get in there and adjust your plan for you. And that's it. It all gets processed. You get to get your plan adjusted, and it's all thanks to this Payable form.
There you go. So head over to payableapps.com/athlete. You can get a discount on their fees and check out all of our favorite templates to get you started. Okay, on to the next question. Hydration pack versus bottles for a 3 to 4 hour race. I'm making the assumption we're talking about riding here.
Well, let's do that. But let's say we could also do pack versus hip. What is the thing I like? The belt. So Molly's very really
different situation, because the belt would be great if it wasn't for the fact that a lot of people, I'm going to say especially women, just have issues with where the pack sits on, or where the belt sits on their stomach and actually gives them gut issues. So I'm not opposed to a belt. I just can't use one.
Or let's say handhelds, but like sort of like this pack, because I think it's a similar discussion with running and biking. Maybe it's like slightly different, but so the 3 to 4 hours. So this is, I think 100K races maybe. I guess it depends who you are and how fast you're going, but that would be like the rough, 50 miles to 100K bikes. And then what would be the running type races we're looking at here? 3 to 4. So this is sort of like marathon, half marathon out to marathon in ultra. Is that sort of like what we're thinking here? I guess?
Yeah, 3 to 4. Yeah, like trail half marathon, say.
Yeah, I guess it all this depends the course and who you are. So that's why we say 3 to 4 hours. And so why that? Like I think after that it does sort of become more of an ultra. Probably it's becoming a bit more time between the places you're getting your aid stations from. If you think about a marathon on the road, they're handing you stuff every, a kilometer or a mile, or at least every 5K you're getting stuff. I'm not sure there is an actual rule, I think, for like official marathons. So that would be a place where you're probably maybe you're doing little bottles or belts. You see a lot of people in road marathons do bottles or belts, but very few people are doing a road marathon using a pack, right? So it has to do with the aid stations and then the frequency that you can get those refills and those hand ups if you can actually be past bottles.
Yeah, so I guess the answer to this question is it depends. And here's the things you need to think about. So thing number one is how often, if at all, will you be able to refill? Because I'd say there are some 3 to 4 hour race scenarios where there might only be one aid station on that, especially if you're, still more of a beginner or a little bit slower. So you're going to take a pro is going to do this race in 90 minutes, but you're going to be out for 3-4 hours. Yep. There might only be one aid station on the course, but you're just going to be longer between them. Or the big thing in gravel racing these days is how little do you have, how little can you stop? So 3 to 4 hour race, you could conceivably not stop at all.
Right.
So I guess that's the first question is, how often are you going to be able to refill, do you want to stop to refill?
Mm-hmm. Now, we know Paris to Ancaster would be one close to home here. And a lot of people do end up doing, you'll see some of the the front runners will do like bottles, and maybe they'll have like support staff hand them a bottle midway, because it is getting out to like that 100K plus. But it's not a very hilly race. So what I try and look at too is the cost of carrying that water versus stopping to refill or pick up a feed bag, or if you're being handed bottles, that's different. But I think a lot of people are not being handed bottles, so it's not really an option, or it's so far between, like you say, the time between those stations is a lot. So that would be, so the cost of carrying more water weight, the cost of stopping, if it's an option, the distance between the aid stations, that would be the third thing. Are you trying to stay in a group would be another factor. So sometimes you have to carry the weight because you're trying to stay in this group. And if you lose the group, then it's going to affect your outcome or your goals for the race. What else? I guess the weather would be another one you'd want to consider. So it could be that you're going to be an hour between every aid station. However, it's so hot that you're going to blow through a bottle or whatever you can carry. If I just have a handheld when I'm running or one bottle on my bike, maybe I'm going to blow through that because it's so warm out.
Or conversely, if it's so cold out, your bottles might actually freeze, and you're better to put a pack on under a jacket so you can actually keep drinking the whole time.
Sure. And then that makes me think, so that's the temperature. So temperature pros and cons, or like positives and negatives, I guess. Is it cold? Is it hot? How does that change the water, the fluid consumption? Because that's pretty central, right? We can sometimes decouple the fueling, the calories, the eating from the water. We can mix them, but we can also have gels or bars and then have our hydration separate. But it really, the temperature and the work rate is a big part of that hydration equation. Like, how much are you doing? 16 ounces an hour or 25 ounces an hour of water, right? Is that like, where are we on that spectrum? And can you carry that for the time between? And that's really what we do, is we math this out. I say, you do the math. How many calories do you need? How much water do you need? And then when can you get those refills and restocks, if at all? If not at all, then you need to have that amount in your pack, in your bottles, in your pockets, in your bento boxes. And then if you can divide it up, then that's your math. You divide up the gels and the bars and the water, the packs between, and then how are you giving it to the person? Are you doing it in bottles or packs? And so the pack, as Molly said, like, I think that ultimate question, that decision, is it a pack or a bottle, is sort of like your body, how much. At some point you have to go to a pack because you just can't have more bottles on your bike. Yeah.
What are you good at doing? I think it's like the other bit. Have you trained with just bottles, or do you always drink out of a pack?
I have people that have never worn a pack because they come from a road and they're like so nervous about wearing it. And they're probably right. Like, they don't want it to jiggle all around on them. So they're going to run 2 bigger bottles and then stop and pick up 2 bigger bottles.
So this really does need to be about like what you've done and like, have you practiced with these? Because like, on the flip side, I am actually really bad at drinking on the bike. I don't love having to take the bottle out and take a drink, especially on gravel roads where I'm shaking around and stuff. So I'd much rather have a pack.
And so then the other one, Paris to Ancaster, there's 2 things. People always finish with full bottles and haven't consumed calories and haven't had water for like hours. And it's sometimes because it's cold and they're in a group, and some of these people haven't done a lot of group riding, so they end up under fueling. So this would be where this would be similar to a mountain biker on a technical single tracky course, and they're not great at getting bottles out. Well, then the pack is going to, the water discussion doesn't matter if you're not going to drink it. This would be just run nothing if you're not going to drink anything. That's going to be your best thing. If you're not going to drink it anyhow, you may as well be light.
I would absolutely, for Paris to Ancaster, run a pack.
Yeah.
Also, it's like warmer too. For a cold race, a pack is actually kind of almost like an extra layer.
Yeah, I guess that's true too. But yeah, that would be probably like the fundamental question if you had to start. So it's sort of like, okay, do you need that much water? But I like that like, what's the way that you'll actually consume this water is probably where a lot of people need to start, is like, okay, you use a pack every training workout you do, and you aren't great at getting your hands off the bars when you're running when you're biking. You probably just stick with what you've been doing in training, right? And this does relate to that. Like, if you think that you're someone who's going to try out belts for races, for the running, or you want to go to like the big bottles now that they have 1 liter bottles on the bike, you need to try it. Because the final thing that I'm thinking here is that something like Paris to Ancaster, bottles get exploded out of the cages with the speed bumps, and you're in a group and you hit a speed bump, and every time, like, I can just think of like 10 incidences in that race alone. I've probably done the race 10 times, but where other people's, never my bottles, have gotten exploded out of their thing. And it's like, okay, well, now you don't have enough water and fluid. Even if you stop, sometimes the bottle's exploded or someone ran over it. So what was the point? You may as well have just run a pack. So yeah, that's sort of the stuff I think about, is like, how well can we keep the bottles in the cages? Like, is it a risk that they're going to get exploded out? And then, yeah, your skill is probably like the biggest determinant, and what you're used to using is related to that.
Perfect. Okay. Last question. Sprint interval training, or supra, max intervals, vomit intervals. Yay, nay, pros, cons. What are we doing here?
So you'll see these in research. They like them. Things like wingate intervals are like have been studied forever, where you sort of go as hard as you can from like second one, and you just sort of fade, and then maybe you do a set of those. So it could be like 5 of them with like a fair bit of recovery between 5-10 minutes, whatever.
So these are in a lot of like experiments, basically. Like a lot of exercise scientists will use them on different populations, testing them out. Now, can you explain why people tend to use them in experiments?
Well, I mean, and sometimes it's sport specific. So like hockey and team sports would use these as trying to do like baseline testing, in the same way that like as cyclists, we do our FTP 20-minute TT, like sort of sports have their things that they do. So for hockey players, historically, they've done things like wingates to try and just figure out, like, I don't know, anaerobic power or whatever you want to call it, right? Like that sprint capacity. And see, right? Because it's sort of like a hockey shift, like how much energy or battery power does this person have for their NHL hockey shift? And so they say, okay, well, does this correlate with the performance in hockey? And so that's like a separate discussion. But that would be like one of the reasons, is that it sort of corresponds with the energy systems of the sport. Probably they would also do it because it's short and it's like easy to strap someone on a bike. Pretty much anyone can do a wingate. It's not like, oh, we need you to run for 4 hours on a treadmill and then we're going to have you do a time trial. Most people wouldn't get past running on a treadmill for the distance from the pounding, right? So it's like one of these things that can be easily replicated. It's a fairly straightforward thing. A lot of those Monarch bikes they use are sort of set up well for that type of experiment, because they sort of drop this weight that like hits you with the resistance. So then you have to start sprinting. So they're sort of built for that type of interval. So I don't know. There's probably a whole story behind wingates. As I remember, yeah, I think there actually is a whole interesting story about wingates. But the other place we're seeing these is with like the menopause world, the sprint interval training. So there's high intensity interval training, and then there's sprint intensity interval training, or sprint intensity training, or sprint interval training. I can't remember if there's 2 I's or 1 I in sit, but there's hit and sit. And so sit, in my mind, is sort of like there's bigger recoveries between these sprint efforts. Whereas hit is more like your 30-30s, Tabata training, that type of stuff, where it's shorter, it's just high intensity. And so they can look pretty similar. There's probably a bit of a Venn diagram there, and it's sort of just hard intervals that don't really take that long. So the question here is sort of like in cycling training, you don't see as much of these wingate styled intervals as you see something like 30-30s, are just like, and the Ronenstedt like 40-20s are really popular in cycling too, but it's like 30 minutes of work. Again, a normal person wouldn't get very far through that because of the aerobic demands on it. Whereas something like a wingate, probably anyone can do 4 by 30 seconds. They'd probably be tired by the end of it, but most people can go really hard and fade and then stand around and wait and then do it again. So why don't we do a lot of them? I don't know. Some of these studies show that, like, oh, if you do it with professional athletes, they get a little better, or it's like the same as if they do training. But a lot of those studies are really short. So it's hard to say, right? Like, it's probably that difference, and anything works for 6 weeks.
Well, and you and I were talking about if these are the same as what we talk about when we talk about strides, right? Because we've talked about this, like my coach, David Roche, is very into the idea of strides. So during just kind of like your easy, normal zone 2E run, you're just going to do like 4 to 6, just 30-second, all out, just sprints. Except these aren't quite the same thing, right? Like the thing is, when we're doing them, they're more pickups, right? You're just speeding up. It's more about the cadence. It's more about the form. You're not going to be vomiting at the end. You're not going to stop for 4 minutes to recover at the end. So they are different in that sense. Like my heart rate rarely gets like super high when I do them.
That's right. And I think that's like an important difference, right? And I don't know, I think David like lists some of this research like sort of like related to it. So it'd be interesting to hear him talk a bit through that. But what it strikes me is he's probably not wrong, because the vomit style intervals, wingate, like the max stuff, it's hard to do it for very long. So I think you would see a big dropout. That's why sometimes these studies are 4 weeks. They're not like a lifetime of exercise. And so this is where something like strides, I think it's like running like a kid at recess, I think is maybe what David says about it. But I've also heard like run like an athlete, go fast, but it's not sprinting because you want to resume afterwards. And some people will walk after strides too, but like it's not the same as lining up for track practice and sending 80 meters or 100 meters as fast as you can, 50 meters as fast as you can, something like that. I guess this would be slightly longer, 200 meters as hard as you can, and then just like collapse on the ground. Like you're racing your friend versus with strides, I almost think like you're running quickly, but it's not like you're racing your friend across the field. Whereas like sprinting is more like you're racing your friend and you have to win or else they're going to pick on you.
I noticed you just tried to say spouse there and then rethought it.
Well, you wait for our 100-mile battle royale next year.
Is this like where you race Leadville and then I race Leadville? But like bike versus run?
No. We're going to have a 100-mile run showdown.
You are not doing 100 miles. That is...
Seems like a bad idea.
That seems like a terrible idea. Listen to our goal setting episode in 2 weeks to learn more.
So what I think, you'll see this in some of the VO2 max research, a lot of Steven Seiler stuff, where it's sort of like, should we do 100% of VO2 max or 90% of VO2 max? And so Steven Seiler stuff often comes down around 90%. I don't want to misrepresent what he says or his research, but that's sort of the rough idea, is like you can do a bit more and you're not quite as fatigued, and there isn't as much risk if we do 90%, but a lot of the benefit is there. A lot of the 30-30 research with Balat, I believe, was also pretty similar, where it's just like, it's enough, and it gets a stimulus, and then you can come back and train again soon, right? And this is where we get back to frequency and consistency. Whereas if you said, no, you need to pin this as hard as you possibly can today, and then we come back 2 days from now, are you going to want to come back? Or are you going to say, I'm going to drop out of the program, out of the study. I'm not going to train anymore. Eventually, I think you'd see that with something like this where you're just maxing out versus what if you just did 30 seconds pretty hard? How much of the benefit is there? Whether we're looking for, in the case of strides, like a neuromuscular benefit, or in something like this where it's maybe trying to like a more cardiovascular adaptation or something like that. Like, is it really that much different if you do 500 watts versus 600 watts or something like that, right? Like, I don't think so. I don't think it's like so profound, especially once you take this over months and years versus in 4 weeks, we need to have you at the highest VO2 max we can so we can record this in a study, is a little different endpoint than you're racing Leadville in August. You have 10 months to get ready. What is the thing that makes sense for you? And it could include things like this. It's just, that's why you probably don't see a lot of cycling coaches say like line up and vomit, 4 times a week or something like that.
Line up and vomit.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, there you go. That's why. Okay, as always, definitely hit us up with your questions. We have an anonymous form. We include a link to that in the show notes. You can also find us on Instagram at Consummate Athlete or consummateathlete.com for all of the things, whether you're looking for coaching, more podcast episodes, we have tons of blog posts, freebies, all that fun stuff. So definitely check it out. All right, happy training, and we will see you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Consummate Athlete Podcast. If you want to hear more training, racing, and endurance sport advice, make sure you subscribe to the podcast and leave us a rating and review. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at consummateathlete.com for a weekly dose of inspiration and advice straight to your inbox.